Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in wa ba'd. So this is going to be part two of the characteristics, the real characteristics of a student of knowledge. This is mainly came about because the last audio that I recorded, as soon as I finished talking about what I was talking about, I realized, like one of those types of things, like later on, you sit back and you say, SubhanAllah, I forgot to mention this, I forgot to mention this. So I said, okay, inshallah, let me write all this stuff down. Because the first one, it wasn't done. It was just a talk. It wasn't done out of any type of preparation. It was kind of like just something that just came up. So, Allahumma musta'an. With this one, when I went back after the first talk and then wrote down the points, I said, oh, subhanAllah, these are two important things that I forgot to miss. I forgot to mention. Well, it's really 2 points, but it's three. I mean, because there's 1 point that's got a sub point. So I guess you could say 3 points that I forgot to mention. And these are like, what I'm talking about, the major signs. The major signs where you could look at a person and you can know. Or not just look at the person, but listen to what the person is talking about. But, just from seeing, interacting with the person, that you'll know that this person is a serious and real student of knowledge. So let me get to the boring part first, and then inshallah I'll get to the more interesting one. Not the boring one, but I mean it's probably one of the things that, like, a lot of people who don't have the background of studying, they might not they might say what you'll understand in a second. So the first thing I'm gonna talk about is pens, and you're like, yeah, pen, like a pen, a qalam, aqlam, because if you're constantly taking notes and writing things down from books all the time, you're going to look for a pen that suits you. You understand? And once you find that pen that you find ease writing with, and it doesn't, because certain pens, that they're very, very hard to write, especially Arabic, you got to keep in mind that a lot of these pens, they're made by English companies for English language, right? So when you're writing in Arabic, and there's like these types of arcs that you have to do. A lot of these pens, they're not for that, and they're not comfortable, and they tire your hand out when you're writing with them. So what happens is, like, you constantly searching for a pen that you can write quickly with and write easily with, and your handwriting is clear and it doesn't bleed through to the other side of the paper, because you can get like the pilot pens, but the pilot pens, they tend to bleed a lot unless you get like a lower number, because I can't remember, because I haven't bought pilot pens in a long time, but there's like 2.0, 2. There's numbers of like the strength of the ink that comes out. So you have to go with the pilot pens, you have to go with the lowest, like not the lowest, but you have to go with a low number, because the higher the number, that's it. You're only going to be writing on one side of the paper. It's impossible to write on the other side of the paper, because if you wrote on the second side of the paper, it'd be illegible. You couldn't read it. So like those types of pens you avoid. You try to stay away from. But it's one of those, like, live and learn. And there's no one pen for everybody. So everybody's gonna have a different pen. But the point is once that person knows what that pen is, that's his, like, it works for him, he's gonna buy, like, as many boxes as he can of those pens. So he's gonna go to like a stationery store and just buy them by the box. He's not gonna. When I was in Saudi Arabia, there was like one specific pen. It's from a company. It's called Rocco. It's a gray pen. I bought so many boxes of those pens you couldn't even imagine. Once I sat down and took notes with them and realized that, like, wow, this pen is cool. My handwriting's clear. It doesn't bleed. It's easy to write with. My hand isn't, like, I don't have to put so much pressure on the pen to write. It's good. It's a very, very good pen for me. Like I said, somebody else might disagree, because it's going to differ from person to person. It's very, very subjective. When it comes to pens, it's like, somebody else's advice is not necessarily going to work for you. All right. But the thing is that you will see that person with the same type of pen all the time. If the person is involved in like calligraphy and studying, like, al khat, like a ruqa and all this type of stuff, then you're gonna see him knowing about the calligraphy, talking about the calligraphy pens and how to split, how they cut the tip of the pen, because you have to cut it in the middle. You have to make like a slice, like a double tongue on the pen to do the calligraphy. So this type of stuff, they'll tell you like the best pen to use, the best ink to use. But I'm just talking about regular pens, just for the regular student of knowledge. He's always gonna know the best notebooks to get. and he's going to know the best pens to use, and he's always going to have the same type of notebook and the same type of pen. Now you got those throwaway notebooks of like notebooks where you just like putting notes of a class that you're taking and you're gonna memorize it, but you're taking a whole silsila, which is a whole series of classes. So like for example, if you start with al ajrumiyah, more than likely, the person they might go from like al ajrumiyah to like tuhfat al ahbab, which is the explanation of mulhat al i'rab. Al-Bahrak. Al-Bahrak is from Hadramaut. They might go to that explanation, or they might go to Mutamima, or they might just teach the Matan of Mulha. It depends on the teacher. So you like, let's just say like a general type of silsila. You go like Al-Ajrumiyah, then you go to Tuhfat Al-Ahbab, then you go to the Mutamima, then you go to Qatar, and then you go to Alfiya, or you go to Ibn Aqil, and then you go to Mughni Labib. So the thing is like when you're going through like Al-Ajrumiyah or Tuhfat Al-Saniyah, whichever one you go through, you're not going to really, prize that notebook, because the notebook is going to be real basic stuff that you're going to memorize. So you don't really care. You just get one of those like a throwaway notebook, one of the cheaper ones that you're going to write the notes in, you're going to memorize it, and you're going to keep, because all that stuff is going to keep being repeated. The notebook that you really want to keep is after you study Ibn Aqil. That's when you get up to Ibn Aqil and either one when you're doing Ibn Aqil or you just finish it and you're about to go into Mughni Labib. That is when you really, really want to get the best quality notebook to start keeping all your notes, of like, because at this point you're going to be going through and doing research for yourself and looking at the different Masail al-Nahwiyah from the books of Suyuti, from the different books of Imam Muhammad ibn Malik, because he's got more than just Alfiya. I mean, the people know him for Alfiya, but now he's got a lot of different books. And then you got the Hawashi of those books, so you're going to be busy, so. And when you're going through and you're taking notes, and especially in the bigger classes, I think, by the time that you get to Qatar al-Nada, you should have a good quality notebook that you're starting to keep notes in, because that's when you start to get into like a lot of the ikhtilaf amongst the madahib al-Nahwiyah. So that time you're going to know, like he's going to have like a good quality notebook. But all the other previous lessons, he's going to have one of those throwaway notebooks where he can just basically, he can write the notes in, write the notes in it, memorize it, because he's going to get the same information in the next book. So he doesn't have to keep that notebook. He doesn't have to keep it. Now, some people keep it. Other people, they're just going to, toss it into a fire when he's done, once it's filled up, and he goes on to the next book, because the main thing is like the bigger notebook. The same thing with like Al-Bayquniyah. When you're doing Al-Bayquniyah, whatever notes you write in the class, you're not going to need them when you get to like, Taqyid wal-Idah, or if you get to like, any of the bigger books in Mustalah Hadith. You're not going to need, those notes from Al-Bayquniyah. So you just use like a cheaper notebook for those classes. But for your research and the things that you need, a strong notebook that holds up, that really is going to hold up over time. It's not going to just rip up and tear up, and and then you start to lose pages, and so pens and notebooks, but the pen. So you're going to see, once he has a notebook that he trusts, he's only going to buy that notebook. And once he has a pen that works for him, and he can write with ease, and without having to put so much pressure on the pen, he's always going to have the same pen. Always going to have the same pen. And if he can't find it, then he'll start testing pens until he can find. And then like I said, he'll probably end up buying like 2 or 3 boxes of those pens. Once he finds a pen that he likes, he's just buy a bunch of them. So that's all right. So that's I guess that's the boring stuff, right? The pens and the notebooks. The second thing, and this is the more important thing, it's just books. Like the conversation, if it's not, in the previous talk, I talked about like whatever that person's studying, he's going to talk about that, whatever he's studying. But there is an exception. It's just if the people are just talking about books, just the best print, the best copy, the best explanation of a book. Student of knowledge can sit down and have a conversation about books from Salat al-Isha until Fajr. Wallahi, and it's happened. I've been in these conversations where we just talk all night about books and about durus and trust me, it's real. It is very, very real, and it can happen. You lose track of time, even to the point where like you by the time you finish the conversation, you look at your watch and it's 3:00. It's 3:00 in the morning, 3:00, and you got to go get ready and try to just get ready for Fajr. Just now you just got to stay awake now until Fajr. It's happened so many times. If you find like if you sit down with a real student of knowledge and you're talking about stuff like sports, you talk about stuff like that, and then they're not gonna really care about the conversation. You open up a conversation about books, it's game over. It's game over. Like you might as well just go ahead and make that person some coffee and some tea, and get some cookies or whatever, and just let them talk, because the conversation is always gonna be about books. Always about books. The print, the tahqiq, all of the everything. So generally, whenever like most students they talk about books, they always talk about the print. What's the best print, and who is the best muhakkak for that book? So, and these are, like I said, these are the serious students of knowledge, because they go through the tahqiq, and these are people that go back and revise and search. And when they're doing research, they look at the tahqiq and they go back and they revise that, so they could tell you, this tahqiq is the best one. This is the most thorough research and the most correct and on point research, because not every single tahqiq that you see is going to be on point. People make mistakes. People use Maktabat Shamila a lot, and then they make a lot of mistakes in their research. But then you got the people who sit down and they do their research through books, and they could tell you, like, for example, which print that they got that information from, what page they got it from, and that's how they used to do even the classes in Damaj back in the days, all the way up until the last days of Damaj. The students would always, if they told you, if they were giving you information like Majmu' al-Fatawa, they say it's in this print, on this page, in this volume, and this page. So that way you can go straight to the library and find it and look it up directly, with no issues. The people that use Maktabat Shamila, they make so many mistakes. I had to go behind one of the students from Damaj just recently because of a book that was written, and it was very apparent that he used Maktabat Shamila when he referenced a lot of the stuff in the book, and it was all off. We had sit down and go back, and me and Sajid, we had to go search for this and search for that and fix this and fix that. It was just so much. It just became so much, even to the point where when we finally finished translating the book, I don't even want to look at it anymore. So you have people that use like Maktabat Shamila, your life is you're not gonna be a happy person. But if you have people that did proper research and they did their tahqiq based on that research that they did from real books, and they tell you the print of the book and they tell you the page number of the book, and you can open it up and look at it, that's the good tahqiq that you're looking for, and that's the thorough research. And those are the people that you want to get the books from. The printers, like I said, you're gonna find like people will swear by books from Dar ibn Jawzi. Other people, back in the days it was Mu'assasat al-Risala. Back in the days it used to be Dar es-Salam. Like back when Dar es-Salam started printing the Kutub al-Sitta and whatnot, then they were considered the best. But then Mu'assasat al-Risala came along, and then you started getting other bookshops. Dar ibn Hazm. Dar ibn Hazm is a lot difficult for people who that are weak in the Arabic language, because they don't generally put tashkil. They don't put the harakat in their books, especially their matun. So you have to take the metin and you have to put the harakat in yourself. If you get any of the matun from Dar ibn Hazm. But Dar ibn Hazm, they generally, alhamdulillah, they print the metin, the full, like they don't do any ikhtisar with the printing. Like for example, with Kitab al-Tawheed, when it's like, call Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, kada, 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 al-ayah, and they don't write out the whole ayah, but Dar ibn Hazm will bring the whole ayah. The same thing with al-Wasatiyah. You see, like a lot of the people, a lot of the matun of al-Wasatiyah that the students memorize from in Sardiya, he doesn't list all the different ayats. The metin is not listed with all the different ayat about the istiwa illahi ala arshi. But the Dar ibn Hazm and the other matun like that, they give you all the ayat, all of them. They list them. But they just, the other matun, they'll just say, like they'll just tell you how many times it's mentioned in the Quran, but they won't actually give you the ayat. But Dar ibn Hazm will give you all the ayat. So it's better to memorize from. But like I said, the issue is with the harakat. So you got like that. You got people that are known for matun, the people that are known like good publishers for books, and whatnot. So you always look at that. You always look at like the best, the best metin. You find a metin that you memorize from a company that and that's it. You stick with that, because you find like you go and you get another metin and you find like a little bit of the wording is changed. It's different. And it just, wallahi, nothing angers me like that than to have something like that. Where like I pick up a metin and I memorize, I know it. There's no doubt about the wording of the metin, and I pick up another one, and it's got like some change in some of the wordings. I hate that. I hate that. And sometimes it's because people use a different manuscript, and then sometimes it's just because people are just stupid. You know, when they print things, they just start, they can't read the manuscript right, or, whatever the case may be. So then they make changes in the metin, and it's just, oh God, I've seen that with Arba'in an-Nawawiyya, I've seen that with Waraqat, I've seen that with the Tahawiyya, all these matun. It's just like, if you find one metin that you're accustomed to, get that metin and just stick with it and keep it with you all the time. That one company, like for me, I love like Dar ibn Hazm, that's like the main matun that I buy from is Dar ibn Hazm, but not all the time are you going to have the metin, because Dar ibn Hazm mainly only prints the bigger matun. So if you want, like for example, like Al-Arba'in an-Nawawiyya, you're not going to get Dar ibn Hazm. They only print the explanation with Ibn Daqiq al-Eid. They don't print it with the actual metin itself. They only print the explanation. So you can't get it, So alhamdulillah. So like I said, you'll see. If you're ever around students of knowledge, they talk about the best print of that book, which of the printers had the best print, clearest print, the best pages, the clearest pages, the best, where some printers, they try to put like a whole bunch of words on one page so the writing's real small. It takes like 7 minutes to read one page, because there's so much on that page, and then you're blind as a bat by the time you finish reading the book. And then other printers, they try to they would rather, make the 1 volume book 2 volumes, but like increase the size of the writing and put it on those beautiful brown pages that are nice to your eyes when you read them, especially when you're reading with the sun glaring. Because if you're in a car and you have the sun glaring and you're reading a book with white pages, oh my God, that hurts your eyes. So the brown pages are a little bit easier on the eyes, especially when you get any type of glare from the sun or just light. Period. Because overseas they use a lot of those. They use those. I don't know what you call those lights in English, but not the regular just light bulbs. They use those bright lights. The ones that you can see every single blemish of your skin. You look like you can almost see your bones when you look in the mirror. So those types of lights. So they're very bright when you on the page whenever you're reading like a white page book. So it's better to get the pages with the brown and with the clear print and no mistakes, because once a publisher is known for like having things dropped out. I have a copy of Tafsir ibn Kathir. I was sitting down going through Tafsir ibn Kathir with the Sheikh for one masala in Surah Al-Ma'idah, and there was so much missing out of the copy that I had. I was like, what is this? So I went and I downloaded like the PDF and checked the PDF copies, and it's like, nah, they had exactly what the Sheikh read. So it's me, my copy, so much dropped out. So you're like, whoa, that's it. I'm never gonna buy from that company ever again. Ever. Well, I check the company and I look at the dar and the printer, and that's it. I'm never gonna buy from them again. So, you always look at the best quality book that you can get. The best tahqiq. Or if even if the muhakkik is not that great, but the book itself is good, and you're gonna study the book anyway, so you'll get the tahqiq from the teacher. Then you got to get the best quality book. Where it doesn't have like stuff just dropped out. Stuff missing, especially like the Egyptian prints. The Egyptian prints, oh my God. The Egyptian prints, it's like when you buy a print from Egypt, you have to put your trust in Allah. You have to put your trust in Allah. They're cheap. They're very, very cheap. Allah Musta'an. Hey, oh, you really put your trust in Allah buying a print from Egypt. Allah Musta'an. Like the Lebanese companies and the Saudi companies are generally the top notch. You got some printers in the Emirates that they've been printing, and they're decent, but they don't print a lot. Like the lot of what you see is gonna come from Lebanon. The better quality stuff, it's mostly from Lebanon. The cheap stuff, it generally comes from Egypt. So I mean they're decent. Like some books, I like, alhamdulillah. I think the Nail al-Awtar that I have is from Egypt, and I haven't had any issues with it so far. But like I said, you putting your trust in Allah with Egyptian books. So Allah Musta'an. And another thing about the books too is that you will never ever see or hear like a student of knowledge except for especially when we're dealing with the books of Ahl Sunnah with Ahl Sunnah with Jama'ah. He'll never talk down. He'll never ever speak bad about a book. Doesn't matter about the book. If it's written by one of the ulama of Ahl Sunnah, or even if it's written, period. If it's written by one of the ulama of Ahl Sunnah, even if that person had fallen into mistakes we're talking about from the people from before, like for example, like you look at like Imam Suyuti. He's an imam, and he had a lot of mistakes. Asma wa Sifat, and his Aqidah. Same thing with Ibn Hazm. And a lot of these individuals, they had a lot of mistakes in their Aqidah. And they're, especially in regards to the Asma wa Sifat. But, even their books, you don't hear the students of knowledge speak bad about it. Now, if there's something that the people need to be warned about, like some mistakes in the book, then they're going to warn about those mistakes. But in general, they're going to speak good about the book. Like in the last audio, I mentioned about Tafsir al-Jalalain. And, about the, being careful with the ayat in regards to Asma wa Sifat. But as far as the rest of the tafsir, as far as the meanings, explaining the meanings of the words and the language and everything, it's a good book. It's a good book. It's a good book to memorize. Just be careful when you're going through anything with the Asma wa Sifat. Like for example, if if he gives a tafsir of al-ghadab, or if he gives a tafsir, and these types of things, and istiwa, al-istiwa, you stay away from that, but other than that, alhamdulillah, good book. It's a very, very good book. And, you see like Suyuti has very, very beneficial books, but, generally the student of knowledge would warn the people to be careful of the mistakes in the book, but they never speak bad about the book or speak down on the book, no matter what the book is. And they'll never ever look at a book as being like below them, as being below them. There's a story. I don't know. I can't remember where I heard the story from or who said the story, but it was a story where one brother was talking about. He asked a da'i from America about a book. If I'm not mistaken, I think the book might have been Ihkam al-Ahkam by Ibn Daqiq al-Eid. I believe it is. And he mentioned in this story that when he asked the person became like angry. And then another person like advised him because he was like, why did he get angry? And he said, because that book is below him. There's no book from Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah that's below you. If you're a student of knowledge, there is no book from Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah that's below you. Wallahi, even the Sharh of al-Usul al-Thalatha of Sheikh bin Baz, wallahi, I can still benefit from it today. I'll still read it till today. And I will never ever look at like a book as being below me, no matter what the book, especially Ihkam al-Ahkam, if that's the book that I remember, if that's the correct book that he was asking about. Ihkam al-Ahkam, subhanallah. Go ask the ulama. Go ask the ulama if any of the ulama say that this book is below them, or they have that look that this book is below them. Ihkam al-Ahkam is one of the greatest, is one of the best mukhtasar, as far as the short abbreviated explanations of Umdat al-Ahkam, is one of the best books. And the way that he breaks down the usul, the understanding of like how to get to the conclusion of these ahkam is unbelievable. Ibn Daqiq al-Eid was a powerhouse in these masail, especially in Qawaid. So a person that's make a statement like that, person's not serious. Person not serious. You never hear the ulama mention any book being below them. We all go back to all these books all the time. Al-Usul al-Thalatha, I memorized Al-Usul al-Thalatha 20-something years ago. That book is never, or any of the explanations of that book, even the explanation, I mentioned the explanation of Sheikh bin Baz, because back when I first memorized the Metan, back in the days, I read all the shuruh. So I read the sharh of Sheikh bin Baz, I read the sharh of Sheikh Zayd al-Madkhali, I read the sharh of Sheikh Salih Fawzan, I read the sharh of Sheikh al-Uthaymin. Every explanation, even I think that later on, like much later, like maybe 10 years or something after I memorized the Metan, they came out with the sharh of Sheikh Muhammad Aman al-Jami, and I bought it and I read it. Even though it's Usul al-Thalatha. There's nothing about Usul al-Thalatha. Alhamdulillah, I memorized it. Like when I was in Damaj, I could read Usul al-Thalatha in my sleep. I could read it backwards, basically. So there was nothing about that book that I didn't, that I was not familiar. And then I read all the explanations of it. Every explanation I could get my hands on. Even the explanations I didn't really like, but I won't mention them because, like I said, student of knowledge, in regards to books, that even if he doesn't like it, he just won't mention it, I look at like talking about books just like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam about food, because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, like ma'ab ta'aman qat, he would never ever speak bad about food. إذا اشتهاه أكله إن لم يشتهي tarakahu. If he desired the food, he would eat it. If he didn't have a desire for the food, he'd leave it. The same thing with books. I mean, I have that type of thing with books. Like even if it's a bad book, I just won't mention it. I've read books that, subhanallah, I was like, subhanallah, it was like, I don't feel like it's a waste of time because you still learn. You learn you look at what was wrong with the explanation and what the person did wrong. And you still learn from the book. But if they're from Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, there's no such thing as a book from Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah being below you. And you're never going to find a student of knowledge speaking bad about a book. Like I said, there might be certain things like, okay, he left this out. It would have been better if he spoke about this. Or maybe he didn't go into detail about this when he should have gone into detail about this. You'll hear things like this, but the overall impression, the overall, like, you see, like, understanding of the book, he's going to praise it. He'll praise it. And it doesn't matter what the book is. And the explanation of Al-Usul al-Thalatha by Shaykh Al-Uthaymin, I'll read it today if I have to. And I've already read that book so many times. And like I said, I memorized the book 20 years ago. And the Sharh of Shaykh Al-Uthaymin was the Sharh that I was memorizing from. When I was memorizing it in the Damaj, I was using the Sharh of Shaykh Al-Uthaymin as the basis of, like, taking the notes from it. I mean, no book from Ahl Sunnah is ever gonna be below the person. The person's always gonna, like, find something good about a book, no matter, as long as, especially the books from Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, it's always gonna find something good about the book. Now you might have, like, a favorite, like, for example, me, when I was early in studying, you had, like, Fath al-Majid and you had Taysir al-Aziz al-Hamid, and both of these are explanations of Kitab al-Tawheed written by two grandsons of Al-Imam Muhammad ibn Abdul-Wahhab. So, me, I preferred, I don't know why, it's just me, it was a preference that I preferred Taysir al-Aziz al-Hamid. For some reason, I love that book a lot. My heart was attached to it more than it was attached to Fath al-Majid. And maybe it's because everybody, it was like Fath al-Majid. But I was studying, when I was in Damaj, I was studying with Yasin al-Adani, which he was later killed in Aden, and he was killed by terrorists in Aden, the Khawarij. They blew him up in front of his wife and child. So when I was studying with him, like, he used to always mention, fawaid from Taysir. So I guess maybe that was something, maybe that has something to do with it, because he was the first student that I heard, that was teaching Tawheed. That would just constantly, he was teaching Fath al-Majid, but he would constantly bring fawaid from Taysir al-Aziz al-Hamid. He said, so it was a book that just, like, it was stuck in, it just got stuck in my nafs. So you have those preferences, right? Like the same thing with tafsir. You're going to have, like, your go-to tafsir. Back in the days, my go-to tafsir was a tafsir al-Baghawi. Another person might say that they go to tafsir al-Sa'di. Another person might say, no, he goes to tafsir ibn Kathir. Another person might, whatever. But my go-to tafsir, when I wanted to just keep something by my side, because I could get tafsir al-Baghawi in one volume, and he kept all the aqwal of the Salaf. Not all the aqwal, but all the pertinent, all the stronger aqwal of the Salaf, he kept them there. He kept them in the book, whereas the other mukhtasarat, you see that they drop them off. They leave out the aqwal of the Salaf. And if you leave out the aqwal of the Salaf in tafsir, what's the benefit of that tafsir? You don't have any hadith. Because you got the tafsir al-Quran bil-Quran, you got the tafsir bil-Hadith, and we got the aqwal, and then we go to the Arabic language, and we got the aqwal of the Salaf, the understanding of the Salaf, the ayah, and how they, that's it. I mean, after that, what's the tafsir? Then you just got, like, the person, like, what is he doing? So, like, tafsir al-Baghawi, I loved it for that purpose, and I kept tafsir al-Baghawi to my side all the time, back in the days, the one volume. So, like, a lot of the times you probably hear me in Durus, quote from Tafsir al-Baghawi. So, I mean, that's just the reality. Everybody's got their go-to tafsir, but they never speak bad about the other books. Like, I'll never, for example, Tafsir al-Sa'di was the first book of tafsir that I ever read completely. That was the first book I read, was Tafsir al-Sa'di. And Tafsir al-Sa'di is a mukhtasar jiddan. It's a great book. It leaves a lot to be desired as far as, like, for example, the meanings of the words and the aqwal of the Salaf, but that's not what he was trying to do, So once you understand what Imam Sa'di was trying to do with his book, you understand, but it was never my go-to book, and it never, it never will be. But it's a great book, and I'll read it. But, when you're looking at, like, a book that you go to, that you want to get the most and the strongest information as fast as possible, in one place. You know, for me that was always tafsir al-Baghawi. You know, when as far as going to a tafsir that's mutawwal, and then it depends. If it's a language issue, then I go to Qurtubi. If it was an issue of athar and I wanted to see the asanid and everything, then of course the tafsir al-Tabari. Tafsir al-Tabari was the main go-to tafsir, and I had them both. I always had them both. So, you know, it depends on the situation. It depends on the situation. But everybody's going to have their go-to books. But they'll never speak bad about the other books. They always find something good to say, especially the books from Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. You know, they always, no book is ever going to be beneath you. And nor will, you know, like I said, you might find things that you're like, okay, you know, maybe he shouldn't have done this, maybe he shouldn't have done that. But the overall, you know, your overall, I guess you could say, review of the book will always be good. It will always be positive, and you always basically tell the people that, you know, this is a book that you should read and you should benefit from. And, you know, and it doesn't matter how long you spend in Talib al-Ilm, no book is beneath you. No book is beneath you. You have to go back and constantly revise even the easiest books. You have to go back and reread them, and you still benefit because you look at the information even from the Sheikh. Like I could go back right now and read the Sharh of Sheikh bin Baz, for example, in Al-Usul al-Thalatha. Easy book. But I can notice things now that I never noticed before, of why the Sheikh mentioned this, and why he left this out, why he spoke about this, or why he spoke about it in this way. Now I can see those things. I couldn't see that before. So it doesn't matter what, you know, how much knowledge you get or how long you spend in Talib al-Ilm, you're always going to benefit from the ulama of Ahl Sunnah. And no book is ever beneath you. If you ever you see a person talk about like, oh, that's, you know, for children, or that's beneath. Nah, that's not a serious person. That person's not serious. That person is not serious. That person is not serious. That's not a real, you know, a serious student of knowledge. And that's not following the ulama, because the ulama would never do that. You never ever hear any of the ulama say that any book from Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah is beneath them. Allahumma musta'an. Wa ila huna subhanaka wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.